think if you have somebody who want to know who ran the best campaign in the country, it's got to be Bob Ehrlich. I mean, he just always had her on the ropes, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend.
Chuck Todd, a few years ago, when he was the editor-in-chief of Hotline.
Very insightful man.
And we got a comment from our guest coming up, Bob Ehrlich, who won that campaign against Kathleen Kennedy Townsend in that heavily Democratic state of Maryland.
And his latest endeavor, the new book, let's take a look at it, America, Hope for Change. Do we have it? Or you
we got it right here, too. If we don't have it electronically, we'll put it up right here. And now we bring to you, look, it's Bobby Ehrlich. Bob, thanks for coming down, pal. It is great to have you. And
Good to see you.
Nice to meet you.
I was on this anchor desk election night this year, or this in 14.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, we're going, wait a minute, there's a surprise in Maryland. There's going to be another Republican governor named Hogan.
From my cabinet, actually.
That's right.
Yeah.
How did he pick the lock?
The Democrats did not show up. The Democrats were, really two reasons, JD. The Democrat base did not show up. They were so demoralized as a result of O'Malley, the incumbent Democratic governor, tanking, and the president tanking, quite frankly, in the polls. Maryland is reflective of sort of what's happening in Washington. Obviously, we're right there. Also, Larry ran a great campaign, really a single issue, spending, taxation, fiscal responsibility, and all that. So he was very disciplined. He has been around politics for over 3 decades. He is the son of a congressman. He was in my cabinet, my appointment secretary, and now it's basically most of my government coming back to Annapolis. So it's been a great experience to watch everybody coming back in this very, very blue state.
Yeah, so your state has been making national news.
Yeah. We do once in a while, every 50 years or so, but now not every 50 years, every 8 years. So it's really cool. This is interesting because it's by any measure a pretty liberal state, obviously. Again, the federal government's right there. It influences our politics. But even in this dark blue state, even in this far left of center state, people said enough. Enough taxation, enough overregulation, enough government, enough.
Were you surprised?
6 months out, yes, but as the election drew closer, I could see that the discipline, obviously, from Larry's campaign. He's a very good candidate, very charismatic, good public speaker, and the Democrats were on their heels. They had nothing to say. They had nothing to sell. You had a dismal administration going out of office. You had the president, obviously, polling very low in the national polls. That really helps in Maryland.
Mindful of that fact, you had a very successful 4 years.
Yep.
And yet, was it national trend? Because your popularity numbers were way up, and you'd figure by rights you'd get reelected.
It's in politics, it's a bummer when you lose.
Well, when you said that.
A week out from the election, I called the pollster. I said, well, our approval rate's near 60, and you're telling me that things look bad, and he was correct. And that's exactly what he said. Only in states like Maryland could this happen. Obviously, JD, you know, some of our former classmates were not causing great national news at the time from Congress. It was a very bad cycle. And sometimes those cycles have a life of their own.
Well, it is worth noting, and I sat down with no less a prominent Politico than Rudy Giuliani.
My buddy.
Up at City Hall in New York. He was talking about trying to run for the Senate against Hillary. And, of course, subsequently, a health condition took him out of that campaign.
Right.
But he would sit there saying, you know, they're happy with me as mayor of New York, but they're never going to vote for me statewide, the same voters who made me mayor. So you get in that habit. Speaking of Giuliani, this kind of advances us on to your book. We've got a quote from His Honor. Speaking of our pal Bobby Ehrlich, quote, his prescriptions are common sense stuff, mixed with a deep understanding of what makes America so unique in the annals of human history. That's about this book, America, Hope for Change.
Now second print, just announced recently. Very proud of that.
And
I wrote it myself.
Well, which is great because, quite frankly, a lot of us in office
get a little help.
Although the commentaries I write daily here are mine, okay?
Truthful.
And we're going to talk more about this in a minute, but very briefly. You have lessons that you think can apply nationally. What you learned in Maryland, some good things, maybe some of the lessons learned the hard way. About 30 seconds, tell us what message you want people to come away with.
Understand the nature of what this Western European-style progressivism is, the challenges it represents to our economy and our culture, and don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want to see like the Europeization of
Well, it's
the United
happening.
States of America. Yeah, I know.
Fundamental transformation is happening, and we need to stop it. We need to win this next election.
In a weird way, well, it's exactly what this current president promised, was it
Absolutely.
not? Yeah,
Speaking of the president, just because he wrote this book, The Audacity of Hope, was there a little play on words there with your book kind of making...
Can't get anything
No?
by you guys.
And
Yeah.
we'll talk
Just
more about
curious.
Hope for Change. Right now, let me remind everybody what's coming up tonight here on Newsmax TV. A very special program. Chris Kyle, A Hero Speaks. A special that allows the American sniper to tell the story in his own words. Tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern and again at 11 Eastern on Newsmax TV.
So I'm getting involved in politics again because that's where the work has to begin. The opportunity gap is the defining issue of our time. More Americans are stuck at their income levels than ever before. It's very hard for people to go from the bottom rungs of the economy to the top, or even to the middle. This should alarm you.
Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush offering his economic vision in Detroit yesterday before the Detroit Economic Club. How appropriate. Good to be back here with Miranda Kahn, and one of my pals is over here. I have to kind
Do
of
you
nudge
think
him
he
a little
drove
bit.
there? No,
No,
it's a bad joke.
but that would have been, well, but that could have been a great demonstration of
Right.
American prowess had Jeb Bush drove a car all the way from Florida to Detroit.
Right.
Yeah, made sure it was a car
a
here.
US.
Another product we're going to motor right along to now, a book by our guest, America, Hope for Change, is the title of the book, now in its second printing, from former Maryland governor and former United States Congressman Bob Ehrlich of Maryland, my old classmate from 1994.
Like a little reunion over
The infamous
here.
clip. Well, it is. We were buddies too, and
So we go way
we
back.
love
Can't
football and
tell it all.
politics. Yeah,
So
That's
he,
right.
we made history back then, first Republican Congress in 40 years.
that's right.
Jeb Bush wants to make history, becoming the third president from the same family.
Yeah.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but are Americans Bushed?
I don't know. We don't know. That's the great question, right? Are they Clintonized? What you saw there, it really wasn't a vision, it was a fact. And by the way, that fact is sort of the predicate for what every Republican candidate's going to be saying. Middle class stagnation, no real income growth over the last 7 years. Wealthier, we've gotten wealthier, that's fine, whatever. But the middle class has not moved under these economic policies from a very progressive president. So what he said, obviously, is the predicate. What to do about it, obviously, is the question. I guess that will follow.
Well, it does follow, but I just got to get back. He's trying to make a point about his name.
Right.
Something he said yesterday is worth listening to. Here's Jeb Bush again in Detroit.
And I love my brother, and I think he's been a great president. It doesn't bother me a bit to be proud of them and love them, but I know for a fact that if I'm going to be successful going beyond the consideration, then I'm going to have to do it on my own.
So, what's in a name? Bush works for him or against him?
Both. Both is the honest answer.
Yeah.
Big time for him, infrastructure, name recognition, and money. Big time against him, I mean, this is America. We fought a revolution to get away from this sort of thing, but here we go. Now, what if it's Hillary Clinton, which is probably going to be, it does mitigate the whole Bush thing because it's Hillary Clinton again. But there is a sense, I think, in the country that, and this is not a hit at Jeb, who I like as a friend, there is a sense in the country that, okay, let's have a real primary, let's really get our ideas out there, let's have our agenda, 1994, Contract with America, let's articulate an agenda, let's tell everybody how we're different from the other guys, let's win.
Are there any other major contenders that you think we should be zooming
I am
in?
not going, they're all friends of ours,
Come
actually.
on, come
we
on.
like,
you
we
guys
like,
never want to call anyone out.
Well,
I know you're
because
friends
we're-
with all of them.
well, but
who
here's
do you
what-
think
okay.
is the most appealing right
here's
now
my
to the masses?
here's my prejudice, governors.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, I love
Okay.
governors. That's my
So
prejudice.
do,
But
do you
not
think
just,
that's what it takes to become
I do.
president?
Particularly after
Okay.
this administration, particularly after
Okay.
this sort of indulgence and weakness manifested around the world. I think the American public is going to look for a governor. Governors make decisions. We're members of Congress, obviously, senators, they're leaders. They don't make the type of decisions that governors make. And I do think after this very weak presidency, people will be looking for an executive.
We just see pictures of Scott Walker, Changed his name to an old basketball player I knew. Scott Walker, everybody knows his name now. He's at Steve King's big throwdown in Iowa the other week. Gave a stem winder. Suddenly he's way up in the polls.
Yeah, bad time, by the way, to be way up in the polls when you're over 20 months out.
Right.
So,
A lot can happen.
But again, he took on the left in a tough state, and he won. He took him on again, and he won. Gives you great cred in our party.
But in fairness, I mean, he was gaining a lot of attention at the Iowa summit, but Jeb Bush wasn't there, and a lot of these other key players weren't there. So
Iowa's
of course
interesting.
he's going to get attention.
Well, of course. And look, the press is all. This is our favorite pastime, obviously. This is what.
Right.
It's what we do, right? Keeps you guys on the air.
Well,
we speculate, we talk about it's important, obviously, but again,
He lives
what's
eats and
most
breathes this.
important is forget the personalities, forget that names.
Right.
It's what ideas, how we're different. How we're going to distinguish ourselves from a very weak, very progressive, very left-leaning president and administration.
Just one final note on Scott Walker. Doesn't have a college degree. Is that a big deal?
Nope.
Not at all. Short, sweet, hard to beat. The kind of incisive prose you find in the book written by Bob Ehrlich, America, Hope for Change. We're efforting there it is.
There it is.
Right
I'm
there.
moving my
Well, that's a
Moving
big
horrible
book,
That
man.
is
script.
a
It's as
mighty
large
book.
as a studio, actually.
Well, because the wisdom in it is so profound and the prose so elegiac.
Thank you.
Try to find those big fancy words. In other words, you write
I
very
wrote-
well,
thank
Bobby.
you, thank
and
you,
He
JD.
wrote it himself.
Well, it's my second book, as you know, and I love to write, and I've been a columnist actually for
We'll
the
look
last...
for more of it. Right now, we got to say goodbye to Bob Ehrlich. Don't you go anywhere. More ahead on America's Forum.